say let's start with your work. Could you share the type of GIS work you do in your current role or have done in your past roles? And since you each come from very different backgrounds, we'd also love to hear how the impact of GIS differs across your sectors, whether that's academia, research, or private industry. Let's start with Laurie on this one.
Okay, what do we cover academically with GIS? Maybe a better question is what don't we cover? Personally, I teach classes on introduction to geospatial technology as well as intro to geographic information systems, really trying to give students the basic. We are finding that 10 years ago when, I was a GTA teaching these courses, most of the students were geography majors. We are now finding that geography majors maybe make up half of a class, and now we are starting to see more geologists, environmental science majors, even business majors starting to realize just how important GIS is and how it can serve them in many, many different skill sets. So it's really trying to accommodate how much growth there is with GIS. Personally, with my own research interests, I use GIS to help deduce patterns that may be occurring in volcanic eruptions globally and regionally. Again, it can span just about anything. We do have professors in our department that use it for transportation planning, for global health and monitoring pandemic. It really runs the gamut.
Let's move on to Phyllis.
Yeah, absolutely. I like this question because I actually started my career after college at BU as a GIS engineer at an AI geospatial startup in Boston. And there, as a GIS engineer, I mostly worked on AEC and civil engineering projects. So at the startup, we incorporated AI identified work with like field work verifications and created these high-level design geodatabases for our clients. So it was a very typical GIS engineer role. I would say that work experience, it was very project focused. And here at Esri, I pivoted from a very project centric to a very product centric work. So I think the biggest difference is even though it is GIS across both roles, the pace really slowed down. Because at the startup, we had deadlines, we had to send out deliverables on time. Here at Esri, even though we have very busy periods during our release cycles, but we clearly know that for product development, it takes time and a great deal of considerations. We have to work as a product engineers from user research to UI UX design and to the actual development with software developers. And then you need to work on testing and documentation. So, and here at Esri, for a product like ArcGIS Pro, there is no real end to this product. I mean, we retired ArcMap, but for ArcGIS Pro, it is iterative with many versions, and we need to continue supporting and maintaining these products with updates and spend a lot of the time on the support and maintenance. The GIS work in my career so far has across many different experiences, but I would say I really enjoy currently working in this product-centric work environment at Esri.
That's really great. Thank you, Phyllis. And let's move on to Tyler.
Sure. So I should say, for context, my work now at the Center for Global Sustainability at University of Maryland, the center is about 10 years old. We were created right after the Paris Climate Change Agreement with the idea that if you have all of these countries making pledges to reduce their emissions and reach net zero by a certain date and do all these things, you need research and analytics to actually make that happen. It's really easy to make a pledge. It's not so easy to figure out how you're going to get there. And obviously, geospatial work and modeling work is a big part of that. And so the center, has helped the U.S. and other countries figure out what their strategy is to meet the Paris Climate Change Agreement, and then, increasingly like working at the state level and doing other things as well. But the idea is basically to build decarbonization pathways through quantitative analysis. And so inherently a part of that is GIS. Although I would say in my current role now, a lot of what I use GIS for is storytelling as opposed to analysis. So maybe we've done an analysis, just focus on the data, not spatial side of things, but then we want to tell the story because let's say we want to say, okay, what states are leading in the clean energy transition? It's really easy to tell that story in a map versus a bar graph where you have a bar for every one of the 50 states. Like, that's just not intuitive. There's a lot of situations where having spatial skills makes it a lot easier to show change over time and space, obviously. So I think that's a lot of what I do now, but that's a really different context than how I used GIS in the past, where it was more deeply analytical, specifically focusing on what the impacts of climate change are in communities and using GIS to figure out adaptation and mitigation strategies, building data sets and dashboards and things like that. I guess to address the other part of the question about sort of like differences in GIS across sectors, touch on that briefly. For me, I think the main variation that I notice is based on the audience rather than the sector. So I've worked in state and federal government, I've worked in the private sector, I'm in academia now. I've really enjoyed all of it, and I feel like ultimately a lot of the GIS, to me, that feels like quite similar across those different jobs. And the variation truly comes from who is the map designed for. If it's, policymakers or the public or something like that, then often it's a question of, okay, like what can we strip back so that this is really, really clear, and somebody who doesn't know what GIS is can get the memo from this map really clearly. Nobody's sitting there explaining it to them, and it's going to be clear. Versus, for a research or academic audience, especially people who have a geospatial background, often you still want to make it clear, but something more complex will be compelling or more valuable for telling the story. So that's really the main difference that I've seen across my roles.
Thank you, Tyler.